Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low magazine? Because 4Low magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we are going to talk to Jack Bettio. Jack is an original OG rock crawler, drag racer, SCCA, Skoda, sports cars, Grand Prix racing, hot rodder. We are going to get into all of the things that he has done. So here we go. Jack Bettio, it is so good to see you. Thank you for coming on board and going to share your life here with our listeners on Conversations with Big Rich. And Jack, it's been a long time since I've seen you, but it's great to talk to you.
Same here, Rich.
So let's jump right in and let's talk about where you grew up and your early influences. So where were you born and raised?
Caldwell, New Jersey, and then we moved to Trenton, and we lived in a Italian neighborhood. Then my grandparents were here since 1914 in Lakehurst. He was a metalsmith, a chief metalsmith, and he went out for the Akron, and he was the last one, and he went under with it, and he died off of the Barnegat Inlet. And my grandmother lived here until she was 92, probably a quarter of a mile from where I'm presently located now.
Okay. And how is the spelling of your last name?
Bettio, Bettio.
Okay.
Actually, the pronunciation in Italian, it's Bettio.
Bettio, okay. So good old Italian.
Yeah, all the way.
All the way. So let's talk about those early influences and stuff. You're obviously a wartime baby. I would imagine there was a lot of industry in your area or nearby. Is that correct?
Well, Lakehurst Naval Air Station is where the Hindenburg blew up, so I guess it doesn't get any more famous than that.
Wow, okay.
And I could throw a stone to the front gate of the Navy base. I'm less than an eighth of a mile away where I'm located now. I'm in business there. Commercial storage. I have two buildings here.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Storage is a good one. Do you do storage wars? What's it like when you have those up for auction? Do you get a bunch of people showing up to try to bid on them?
First of all, we store nothing for household.
Okay.
We're a commercial storage and business. We have 3 very important government contractors here. One that makes the supports for the Blackhawks, helicopters, and 2 other ones are contractors from the Navy base. That's what makes our location so premium, because we're so close to them assembling or manufacturing and taking it and distributing it to the base here. And I don't know if you're cognizant of this, but Lakehurst Naval Air Station is now a joint base, Fort Dix, McGuire, and Lakehurst, and they're all intertwined. And between Lakehurst and McGuire, there's a 14-mile runway, and that was the alternate for the space shuttle. If they ever had to use it, they would have a place to land. But I'm a quarter or an eighth of a mile from the main gate. So we're very desirable for contractors that are on Navy Lakehurst or McGuire or Fort Dix.
Okay. 14-mile runway. Wow.
14 miles. That's the alternate for the space shuttle. If they ever had to use it, that's how long it is.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine what that would be like to upkeep and to level that thing and all that kind of stuff. That's crazy. So
yeah. I guess they got to have alternates, though. I mean,
yeah.
Because things happen that they can't land where they're supposed to or come back or whatever.
Yeah, so completely different weather patterns up north as opposed to, down in Florida, that's for sure. So I guess once they start the landing process, it's like, okay, we're coming in. Better get us on the right runway.
Or someplace to land, that's for sure.
Yeah. So those early years, you were near the military bases. I would imagine you probably don't remember being that young, the war effort going on, but after that, with the explosion in people coming back, the men coming back from overseas, and then, the private industry having ramped up after the Depression and the war, I would imagine it was a kind of a real busy time during those mid to late 40s, early 50s.
I can remember as a kid, the only thing I can remember is when we lived in Trenton. My father was the plant manager building airplanes on the river there by the bridge. And I can remember as a kid that we used to have to cut the top and the bottom out of cans and squashing them and then packing them into a box. It was, I guess, our way of recycling the steel or the metal or whatever it was. But that's the only thing I remember as a young kid. And then we moved to Caudwell, and my father was an engineer for Caudwell Wright. Then he went to work for Bechtel.
Okay, that's a familiar name.
My father was the field engineer for Bechtel that built the VAB building down at the Cape.
Oh, awesome. So the early years when you're going to school, what were your interests? I mean, did you play sports as you got older? Did you, I would imagine, modes of transportation was bicycle to begin with earlier?
Yeah, that's correct. But the thing is that I can remember back then is that I went to Catholic school until the 11th grade. And my father had parted and was working in Florida, and I no longer wanted to go to Catholic school. I think I had enough of that. And then we went on to high school, which I went to a public school. And then I got a scholarship when I was a senior. I got a scholarship from General Motors. And I spent 2 years at William & Mary and then 3.5 years at GM Institute.
Oh, and your study was automotive engineering then?
Absolutely.
Excellent. And then so let's jump right into that. At GM, did you work for GM after getting your education?
That was an interesting story. I worked summers teaching when I was going through school for General GMC. And I was offered an assistant service manager's job. And I said, okay, I'll take it. And before this time ran out that I had to decide, they said, well, we can't give you that position. And I didn't realize it, but GM owned the dealership or had an interest in the dealership. And they said I couldn't go to work for them. And that's what happened with my education. I stopped there. I graduated, but I got nothing from GM or William & Mary because I left on poor terms. They wanted me to go on the road teaching. And at that point, I was racing, and I guess 1959, I set the national SeaGas record in drag racing. So I had no interest in traveling at their whim to teach, going all over the country. So
because you wanted to race.
Absolutely. Then I got my SCCA license, and Roger Penske signed my license in Vineland, New Jersey, and in Lime Rock, Connecticut. And then I had my license for SCCA for road racing in Austin Healey. That was one of the 12 cars that were prepared by Brown that were brought over to race in the Grand Prix here in the United States. So I had one of those cars that I was campaigning.
Wow, I am learning a lot.
That's what happens when you get to be 80.
The experiences, yes. So, how did you get involved with drag racing?
I really don't know. I guess street racing to start with, and started figuring out, well, we might as well do this to be legal. And it's just an interest in cars at all times. The idea of speed and the recognition, and
Okay. Did you? I got to ask this question because my dad is of the the same era and drag racing and stuff like that. Did your hairstyle, was it like slicked back, kind of a DA, a duck's ass?
No. It was a flat top.
Flat top.
That was the thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And you wore a white T-shirt, and you put your pack of cigarettes rolled up in your sleeve.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, my dad had more of a DA. Yep. Yeah. He was West Coast.
Oh, okay. Well, they were always so much further ahead of the East Coast, and everybody looked to the West
for fashions and stuff. Yeah, I guess for
cars and the trend of what they did, how they made race cars or street rods or whatever you want to call them, hot rods, I guess.
Yeah, Southern California was a big push area for that. My parents and myself grew up in Northern California, but still it was a big scene. Street racing was huge.
And that was the beginning of drag racing. That's how drag racing started. People were getting locked up for it, so they said, "Well, let's legalize this thing."
Exactly.
That reminds me of an incident back, and I can't remember what year it was, but my big thing that I wanted to become a member of the Century Club. That was 100 miles an hour on the beach down in Daytona.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you make it?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I made it in a 58 Corvette.
Nice. So in that SeaGasser class, what were you running? What's that?
55 Chevy, 301 cubic inches.
301 cubic inches. And what were you running in the quarter mile? Do you remember?
I'm not going to take this out of memory. I'm just taking it by what I can visualize. 113 miles an hour, 13.2.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it sounds about right. It was probably topped out, but got there in a hurry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. So then you got out of schooling. You didn't work for GM. You continued to race. You got your SCCA license. What led to drag racing to the SCCA, and how did you get involved with that series?
Well, I always liked sports cars, and in 1963, I had bought a new Corvette. And at that time, I think it was around $12,000, which was absurd because I asked my father to co-sign for me, and he wouldn't do that. And he made me buy some lots in Cocoa, Florida. He said, I was co-signed for you, but I bought 2 lots, and I had to pay, I think it was like $27 a month for each one. and that was the only way he was going to co-sign for this $12,000 or $13,000 1963 Stingray with the Daytona tank and the suspension, and that was one of my highlights of having a brand new car. But I think my payments were like $1,000 or $800.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was absurd at that time, because I paid it off in a year. Paid the car off in a year. I traded in my '58 Fuelie Corvette, which now that car is probably worth twice what the '63 was worth. That car is probably worth over $100,000 today. It was a 1958 fuel injected Roadster, and today it's just like a priceless car.
Right. Don't you wish that hindsight matched foresight so that you could say, "Man, I'm not gonna sell these cars. I'm gonna figure out some other way to get the next car and then put them in a barn."
Yeah, but you know what? At the time, I guess it was greed. Somebody offered you a good number, and you say, "Oh, whoa, that's all. I'm going to sell it for that."
Yeah, some of the historic rock crawlers, which we'll get into, that's happened with, and then guys look back on it and go, "Wow, I'd really like to get that thing back."
Absolutely. In fact, that's a funny story. My car that I set the SeaGas record in, it sat in Las Vegas barnyard or in a lot for 7 or 8 years. Last year, the person that bought it, and he traced the car back to me through the VIN number in New Jersey, I guess.
Wow.
And we've become friends, and he's drag racing the car again. But the car sat for 7 years in a field, and he restored it in the original paint, or the way it was sold. And he's been drag racing it, but he did the history on the car because it still had alley-oop on the side, and that's how he got a hold of me through the VIN number, and we've become friends, and we correspond back and forth.
That's awesome.
Yes,
that's kind of cool. Alley-oop was the name of the car, huh?
Correct.
So what was the name of the '58? Did it have a name?
Yeah. That was the big thing back then. Name the cars. Turquoise Raider it was. The car was turquoise.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a big thing with the JK Jeep evolution. Everybody I think people name their vehicles as soon as they see it and decide to buy it.
Yeah, but back when I was a kid, if your car didn't have a name, it was a no name. It was unknown. Everybody knew the car by its name.
There you go. So then, how did the sports car racing go?
I was in a organization kind of like the Outlaws. It was called Skoda, and we ran for money. And SCCA didn't adorn you running bootlegging or whatever you want to call it with other organizations. And I had run with Skoda for several years and just faded away from SCCA. SCCA was too much traveling and nothing to help pay the expenses. That was strictly on your own budget.
Okay. And the Skoda was more of a more local series then? It wasn't so much travel?
No, it wasn't so much local, but it was that it paid money. At least you covered your expenses and a couple bucks left over.
Okay.
That's how we did. But it was Bill Clarion was the promoter for Skoda, and he used to, have some decent purses that we ran for. There was no substitute to support your habit, like getting paid something, at least your expenses anyway.
Right. Okay. The Skoda racing, is that where you raced with the cars they brought over from England?
I had raced. I had raced that car in Skoda. So there again, somebody came up to me, or a good friend, and wanted to buy the car, and I sold it. And then I built a Austin Healey 104 series and put a Chevy V8 in it, and that's what I raced. And the car that came from England was all aluminum, and it got into a bad wreck at Skoda. So that car, died on its vine, I'd say.
Okay. And so you had an Austin Healey with a V8. That's kind of the pre-Cobra days.
Yes. Yep. I had a 301 and a 104 series Austin Healey. That's what I campaigned.
And what were some of the names of some of the racers that you raced against that maybe we know?
Probably, I can't think of anybody that went on to become famous. Michael Andretti's, one of the Andretti's son or cousin raced with our series, and that's the Andretti is the only one. Oh, you know what? And Steve Krisloff.
Okay.
He married the owner of Indianapolis's daughter. Steve was probably right at the top of our club, Skoda, because he had a Porsche that he won with. And then I can't think of the guy's, Andretti's nephew or somebody that raced with us. That's the only two that I can think of.
Okay. So then after racing the Austin Healey, what came after that?
Flying.
Flying. You were an adrenaline junkie.
Well, but flying was, first of all, the reason it came about flying is my father had an Aero Coupe when he was the manager of the plant in Trenton that built airplanes, and we were flying above the field. It was a gravel field, upside down in an Aero Coupe, and I slid out of the seatbelt. I was a little kid, and probably 75 feet that I fell out of the airplane upside down and hit the ground.
What?
Yes. Everybody says, now that I told you that, everybody says, now I know what's wrong with you.
That was going to be my next line. That must.
Everybody says it to me.
So let's talk about that. How old were you then?
I'm going to guess probably 5 or 6.
All right. So you don't remember what that feeling was like when you dropped?
Yes, I do.
Oh.
I was scared to death. I lost my camel hair hat, and my mother was going to give me a beating for that. That's the only thing I can remember about that.
Not the fear of what's going to happen when you hit the ground at 75 miles an hour, or 75
no,
from 75 feet. Yeah.
No, I didn't think anything of it, because I just, was thinking, oh man, I lost my hat and now I'm going to get a beating. And my mother's famous thing was a coat hanger across your backside, and that put the welts on you.
Yeah, now moms would go to jail for that.
Absolutely.
But that's why our generation, the boomer generation is so, I don't know. I think it's why we are the way we are.
Yeah, well, that was the big thing. The mother wouldn't hit you on your arms or your face or your back or anything, but your backside, a little welt with a wire hanger, that did wonders for you to remember. Man, I'm not going to go through that again.
Right. My mom was famous for the karate chop. I mean, I'd get chopped in the throat. She'll. Luckily, she doesn't listen to these, but yeah,
good.
She got me a couple of times really good. So yeah, you fell out of an airplane 75 feet in the air onto gravel.
On the gravel.
Wow, that's amazing. Did your dad realize it right away, or did he fly around for a while and then go, "Hey,
No, no.
where's Jack?"
No, I guess immediately landed. I can't remember anything other than being fearful of losing my hat.
That's so interesting to think back on something like that, to realize what we thought was so important at that time.
Yeah.
So let's get into the flying then. So from falling out of an airplane, and then when did you start flying? I'm sure it was you flew as you grew up, or did you did you get back into airplanes after racing?
It came after. I'm just trying to think. Probably in the late 60s, I started flying. It's just something that I wanted to do. And, I've been around aviation all my life. And about 5 or 10 airplanes later, I got my commercial license, instrument rating, land, twin engine, and the sea twin engine ratings.
Okay. Did you fly commercially?
No.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say that. Yes, I did. I built up a lot of time flying checks back from Monmouth County Airport to Indianapolis at night. That's how I built up a lot of my time for my commercial license.
You flew checks?
Checks, bank checks.
Oh, okay.
I was a co-pilot on a E-90 King Air. And it was a commercial operation, they had to have a pilot and a co-pilot, and I flew co-pilot to build up time for my commercial license.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you meant checks like Czechoslovakians or checks.
No,
Okay.
bank checks.
Bank checks, all right.
They were canceled checks, actually.
Oh, really? In the day that we actually had canceled checks? Huh.
Yes.
Things have changed.
Yeah, a lot.
So then from racing into flying, you were doing it at the same time?
No, it was after the race, after, that I retired from racing or gave it up, I got into planes, which was spending more money than I should have.
Were you married by then?
Yes.
Okay. Are you're married to the same woman still?
No.
Okay.
I put her through college and then put her through law school, and then she sued me for divorce.
Oh, okay.
Smart, huh? Smart?
Okay, that's a rough one, but
yes,
I understand.
40 days of trial, divorce.
Wow, 40 days?
40 days.
So was that when you had to give up racing?
No, I probably went into flying back then. I was in fact, I wasn't flying by then.
Okay. Did you race planes?
I had to sell one of my airplanes to pay my divorce attorney.
Okay. Obviously not as good as your wife.
No.
Ex-wife, right. Okay. So then did you end up racing airplanes as well?
No.
I
just did it for enjoyment and travel. And I flew out of the country many times. We went to Brazil and all the out islands, Canada, Mexico. It was just for pleasure.
Okay. And what were you doing at that time for work?
I was a contractor. When I left General Motors, I went into business, heavy excavation, asphalt paving. I was a contractor.
All right. And you did public works, or was it all
government
private?
Work.
Mostly government. Okay.
Mostly government.
That makes sense, growing up and being around the military bases.
Yeah.
And how long did you stay in the excavation heavy equipment business?
I guess to 76. Then I bought in 1977. I bought a liquor license and a building and expanded it from there and expanded it, and I was doing $1.5 million worth of business a year in the liquor business.
Wow. It just regular liquor sales or?
Yes, sales.
Okay. So you
Yep.
were more of a distributor?
Actually a retailer.
Okay. So more like a liquor store where the general public would come in. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, there's liquor is always one of those things that is a business that, in less prohibition will always succeed no matter what the economy is like.
Yeah, the worse it gets, the better it is.
Right. Exactly. It's kind of like laundromats.
Yes. Yes.
Although I wouldn't want to be a bar owner, I understand
No,
that,
absolutely not. You can't deal with a drunk. You just can't reason with a person that's intoxicated.
Yeah, it's bad enough I worked liquor stores through college and right after college, but it was when somebody would come in drunk, or like in Santa Barbara where I went to college, the liquor store that I worked there was across the street from a park, and we would get the guys that come in for their night train, their little pint bottle and night train.
Yeah.
And it was pretty bad.
I remember when the night train used to sell for 98 cents a pint.
Wow. People are probably going right now, night train? What the hell is night train?
It was like Thunderbird and Boone's Farm.
Yep. Little MD 2020, Mad Dog, Mogan David.
MD 2020. How old are you, Rich?
I am 63.
Oh, okay. Because you remember all these things that when I was probably in my 20s, that's when I remember all those names.
Right. Yep. And they were still around when I got to my 20s, because that's when working at the liquor store. Those were the hot items, and then the little bottles of sherry.
Absolutely.
I couldn't understand why guys they would come in and buy sherry. I guess because they didn't really have a taste buds left anymore. They just needed the alcohol.
And that was the cheapest thing that you could get with alcohol in it.
Exactly, except for cough medicine.
Well, the Robitussin, that went out a long time before that.
Yeah, I guess it did, didn't it?
Yeah, Robitussin, I think, was the one that the alcohol was in. Was it? I guess it was alcohol.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But I remember that is going to school, in Catholic school, that everybody had a cough. They all carried the Robitussin with them.
So, Catholic school. Sister Mary Margaret. Let's see. That was Cheech and Chong did a thing about Sister Mary Margaret, I think it was. And
I had my sister Ursula.
Sister Ursula, and not Ursula Andrews.
Yeah.
Now people will be doing a Google search. Ursula Andrews, who's that? Well, on the same line as Raquel Welch and others. Yep. Sophia Loren. Well, yeah, we can get into all those.
How did you get into this podcasting?
Okay, I'll answer that question. What happened was Shelley has been on me for quite a few years about putting together a podcast about, she just said I should write a book, and, so the grandkids would have something so they could know me, and I was like, well, we'd have to wait until they were 18 at least for them to read it. And then, so she started pushing for me to do a podcast, and I'm one of those that it's like, do I really want to start something new? Well, she's really pushed me out of my boundaries since I met her in 2009. And we got to the COVID restrictions last year where everything shut down. And I had just previously talked about doing it, and I was talking to Wyatt Pemberton, who does the Talent Tank. And that's the Ultra 4 KOH based podcast, racing podcast. And he said, Rich, go for it. You know a lot of people, you've been around the sport a long time, so, take advantage of that. So after KOH, we were in Texas waiting for our events series to start, and it was like, I might as well do something because we couldn't do anything. We had to cancel the beginning of our season and move things around. So sitting in our hotel that we own in Texas, I was kind of bored, and I said, okay, what do I need to do to start these podcasts? So we did some research, jumped right in, and started putting together the podcast. And the whole idea was, to tell the history of off-road, especially rock crawling.
To get it down on pencil and paper where in the future we'll have this. That's the most important thing, because people today, they just don't care about any of the history. I mean, look what they're doing with our monuments and stuff. They're tearing stuff down. But you got to make our sport became very interesting, how it started, how it progressed, and today what it is. I mean, that's you got to put down on hard stones.
Right, and be there for posterity so that the next generations can understand what life was like. Because before the internet, it's really hard to understand really what life was like, and people aren't experiencing as much as we did. I think they are into experiences, but they're not experiencing the same type of things. And I don't mean
growth. The same growth and progress of the sport, how it started, and what happened after that.
Correct. True. And once everything's on the internet, it's around forever anyway, I think. So,
well, if you can believe half the stuff, that's the problem.
We're of that generation.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about 1976 or thereabouts when you got into the liquor store and doing liquor sales. So you became a liquor store owner. How long did you do that for?
Actually, I'm just trying to think. While I was still in the contracting business, I bought it because I needed some tax write-offs for my contracting company. And at that time, I had bought some property in Toms River, and I had started a garden center, and I was doing bidding because I had familiarization with SAM, which is the agency that does the government bidding, and I started bidding all over the state, and I needed some write-offs. That's exactly why I got into the liquor store, and it progressed from there. But I built it into, we were doing $1.5 million when I sold it, so it's something that I paid $100,000 for and sold it for $2.4 million.
Wow, I could use an investment like that. So you ran the liquor store while you had the contracting business?
No.
Oh, okay.
I hired a good friend that just retired from the service
to run the liquor store.
Yeah, to run the liquor store. He just retired out of the Navy. He was a good friend, a flying friend. That's how that came about.
Okay. All right. So then you had the contracting business, you had the liquor store business. What other things did you get involved with?
That was enough. Come on. I'm getting too okay. No, then I still had property here close to the Navy Air Station, and I said, well, I might as well develop that because I sold the liquor store And then I sold the shopping center that's behind the liquor store, and I still had 5.5 acres left over. And that's where I have the presently Ridgeway Lockup, which is a commercial storage for businesses.
Okay.
And I got 3 government contractors here.
Perfect. So let's jump into how off-road became part of your life.
Well, I skied for many years, and one day I got off the plane in Aspen, Colorado, and saw this beautiful white CJ7. And I said, I want to buy that. So, a long story short, I finally wound up buying it. It was Stage West. And I don't know if you know the name, but
Yes.
Chris Overacker. That's his mother's Jeep. And I bought that, and that's how I got into off-roading. Chris took me to Moab, Utah, and he says, well, we're going to go up this trail. And I'm looking up this mountain. There's no road there. There's no nothing. I said, where? And he goes, right up there. And I go, it's on Moab Rim. And I go, what? We're not going up there. And that's how I got started in off-roading.
And what year was that, approximately?
God, I can't even remember. I would say
80s, 90s?
No, 82.
82, okay.
Yeah. I mean, Moab was nothing in 82. I mean, there's a thing that we say, we could look back and say, oh, I should have bought some property there. There was no motels or hotels in Moab at that time. And
Wow.
we said, hey, this would be a great place. After, I went up this no road to Moab Rim, and I said, hey, this is really fun. So I had bought a place in Aspen, Colorado, and we made many trips from Aspen to Moab after that. But today, Moab is just out of sight.
You cannot find property now unless you are willing to spend $1 million or more for pretty much an undeveloped lot.
Yes.
Yeah, we looked at purchasing a 2-acre parcel in Moab with a house on it, and if that whole hindsight thing, it would have been well worth it to spend what they wanted, even though we didn't want to spend that much.
Exactly.
And the crazy thing with that is that we made an offer. We made like 3 or 4 offers. They wouldn't accept any of them. And then like a year later, they accepted an offer that was lower than our original offer.
Yeah. One friend that we became very friendly with was Dan Mick.
Okay.
You must know the name.
Oh,
I
know Dan.
Yeah. Well, Tom Wood, I'm quite sure you know who that is.
Absolutely.
Tom and I met in Moab probably in 82 or 83 when he worked for 6 States, and we became very close friends. In fact, I was going to be his business partner at one point, but we still are very close friends.
I understand you guys occasionally do some fishing.
Yes. Yep.
I had heard that. Charlie and Melchner, yep. And then also the other one that mentioned it was Ken Bloom.
Oh, sure. Kenny.
Yep. Kenny Bloom.
Yeah.
So
they're names from the past, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. They're still there. In fact, I got your phone number from Charlie because I looked for it. I couldn't find it in my records. And for some reason, I didn't have you in my phone. And with the change of phones over the years, I've lost some phone numbers. And then Charlie goes, yeah, that's a great idea. Interview Jack. And so that's how we ended up here. But it's you were on my list when I first started putting together this podcast. I made a list of 50 people I wanted to interview. That list is now close to 400.
Wow.
And I've already done 70, but every time I do an interview, I add somebody on there that I want to interview. So it just keeps getting longer and longer and longer.
Yeah. In fact, I just got a thing from Charlie. He's down in Annapolis. He's got my boat that he's been using for the last 2 or 3 years. It's a 1969 Boston Whaler that I bought brand new. And I've had it out at Lake Powell. I've had it in many, many places, but it's just a easy towing, perfect boat for 4 or 5 people. And I just got a picture of it. He sent it to me from down in Annapolis. That's where he's going into the Chesapeake today. He says, "Oh, well, we'll probably cover 60 miles today." I said, "Yeah, on Lake Powell, I did 150 miles. I had probably close to 70 gallons of fuel. I had under the console, under the seat. I had tanks made for it. So, because when we were on Lake Powell, it's 75 miles between places you could buy fuel."
Right.
I know.
That's awesome. You've had an interesting life. We got to keep going into this thing. So in 83, 82, you buy the Jeep, you go to Moab, you do Moab Rim, you meet Tom Woods.
That was on Easter Jeep Safari that Tom was still working for 6 states at the time.
Okay.
And I was the one that was instrumental. I said, "Tom, you need to go out on your own." He says, "Oh," I says, "Well, what about being a partner with you?" And so it was a long, that's how I met Tom. I had the front drive shaft on Alley Oop 2, which was my Jeep that I bought from Stage West. The front drive shaft kept twisting because I had a modified 401 AMC motor in it. And he says, "Well, I can build you one." And I go, this is how I met Tom. He says, "I could build you one." I said, "Oh yeah, how much?" He says, "Well, let's build you one first." So I says, "Well, how would you build me one if you don't want to tell me how much it's going to cost me? I know what the Grand Junction people were charging me for through Stage West for this front drive shaft." He said, "I'll build you one." And I said, "Well, how much deposit?" He said, No, you try it out. If you bend it, you don't owe me anything." And I said, "Well, how much would I owe you if I didn't?" He says, "Just try it out." That's how I met Tom. I said, "Do you know where I'm from?" He goes, "No." I said, "I'm from," and I used it loosely. I said, "I'm from New York, and you're going to just put a drive shaft on build me a drive shaft, put it on, and I go use it here at Easter Jeep Safari." He says, "Yeah." I said, "Oh boy." So, and that drive shaft still is on the Jeep because I sold that Jeep to Tom Wood.
Oh, did you?
Yes. Yep.
Wow, the world is so small.
Yes, that's what people don't realize. And you know what? One thing that I've followed in my life that was always, why did my grandmother say that? If you can't say something good, don't say anything at all. And I could never understand what that meant. But the world is so small. You say one bad thing about a person, and it'll travel throughout the United States, it seems. You know, it's funny how little things when you were a kid that you remember from what your grandparents told you, and how they really come true.
Yep, that's been my experience.
Yep.
That whole thing of don't burn bridges.
Yes.
Don't step on people as you go up the ladder because you may be under them.
And how about this one? Don't drink out of the garden hose.
Yeah, because that's dangerous. You're all going to die.
Exactly.
Like riding in vehicles that didn't even come with seatbelts, or
Right.
the back of pickup trucks.
Yep.
Bicycling and skateboarding without helmets. We didn't even know what helmets were.
Well, the football people had those leather things.
Actually, I can remember wearing one. I wore my dad's. We'd go play tackle football down in the park, and I'd wear the leather helmet.
Yep.
Just because it was cool, not for any other reason.
Well, in case you got your brains knocked out, they wouldn't fall on the ground.
Exactly. They knew where they were at. Exactly.
Right.
So then you're jeeping. At that point, the rock crawling events get started, and how did you get involved with the rock crawling?
In Colorado, it was McMullen started, and then it bloomed from there. And when they were registering, and that's how I got the number 102, because I was the 102nd person that signed up for rock crawling as an event. And I'm just trying to think of the welder's name from Colorado. Him, and the pink CJ6.
The CJ6, the pink one, that was Harold Off?
Harold Off.
Okay.
And that group, that's how we started. I can't think of the welder's name from Carpendale. He was a good friend of Harold's.
Pat Gramillion.
Pat Gramillion. Well, you know all these people, don't you?
I interviewed Pat.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's how it all got started, Then Pat says, well, I lived in Aspen, Pat's in Carpendale. He's probably 20 miles away, but I met him through Chris Overrocker at Stage West. Did you interview Chris? That's a person that you should interview.
No, I have not.
Yeah. I mean, he was one of the forerunners of rock crawling. He did a lot of building for different customers. But he got me to go to Moab for the first time.
That's awesome. So
yeah.
What was your first event that you did then?
Competitively?
Yes. Were you involved with the very first one was in New Mexico in Las Cruces. And
Las
then
Cruces.
The second one, I believe, was either Arizona or
Arizona.
Southern
That's
California.
The second one.
Okay.
Right, Arizona. Because I have a picture of Pat Gramillion standing straight up on an obstacle.
And that was your first one. Okay.
Yes. Jake Manis is another one that when we started, that I think you should interview because he goes way back too. But that's the whole Colorado group and the New Mexico group.
Right. And so after competing in that first event, what was it like competing in that first event?
Not very well organized. Everybody had more or less road jeeps or trail jeeps competing, and it really wasn't like hardcore competition. People had, they had trail rigs that they were lifted, or tires and motors or whatever, but it wasn't on anywhere near the scale it is today, or like when you started We Rock or Arca or any of those. I mean, they were, as compared to today they're $100,000 rigs. They're not off-road vehicles.
Yeah, and that's if you build them yourself.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That was my point. I mean, that was like the forerunning of, taking your Jeep off the street and putting a lift kit on it and a set of tires. That's what that second event was like to me.
Right. Were you at that first Paragon event in New Rock?
No.
Okay.
Charlie was, though.
Yes.
I was involved with a southern group down in Jellicoe, Tennessee. I ran that series, and I think we finished, right at the top of that. That's where Chris Durham, he won the championship, and Shoopy won the other one.
Ken Shoop, yep.
Ken Shoop. You interviewed those guys, I hope.
Durham I have. Ken I have not been able to nail down. He keeps saying yes, and then he's not available because he runs a tow business.
Right.
So he never knows when he's going to be available. But the next time I'm out in that area, I am going to sit him down, and we'll do it across the table if we have to, in the middle of the night if we have to.
I met those two guys in King of the Hammers. It wasn't King of the Hammers then. It was the first event. It snowed when we were in California. Charlie and I came out from the east, and Chris and Shoop, we met them and stayed in the same hotel in King of the Hammers down there. It snowed that year we were there. I think it was February.
Yep. Absolutely. So then
Boy,
let's...
you talk about something that's grown.
Yes.
Compared to when we started in 2000, and I went every year till 2010, and now Charlie still goes every year, and his kids are driving now. And what's the other one that he has? He has a boy and a girl that are both driving now from New Mexico. Is it not New Mexico? He's won King of the Hammers.
Shannon Campbell.
Shannon Campbell.
Out of Arizona, yes.
Arizona. My memory is terrible. I can't remember these guys' names, but I can see them visually in my brain.
And I know who you're talking about. It just takes me a minute to put the name together.
Yeah. But now the next generation of his kids are running. Well, little Charlie is driving too.
Yep.
And so is Hannah.
Yep, they'll be.
In fact, Charlie has two of my old rigs that we were the first team, Quadratech. I started the team.
Yeah, I was going to get into the team Quadratech thing. So you guys ran early. You were running that Stage West CJ7?
For the King of the Hammers?
No, for the early rock crawls.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we only ran that 1 year, and then I built a rig.
Okay.
That was 2000. We built a rig for it wasn't called the King of the Hammers then. It was just, I forgot what it was called. But the first year was 2000 that Charlie and I drove out from east here, and we competed in that first. That was it? I think Ranch ran that.
No, that would have been, well, yeah, in 2000, it wouldn't have been the racing. It was it was a rock crawl event, and they had
Shannon was there,
right, and Chris
and Shoop, Charlie, myself, Ken Bloom was there. Oh God. Man, that's a long time ago.
Guys like Mike Schaefer probably would have been there at that time. Lance Clifford, Bob Rogie, some of the West Coast guys.
But nobody at that time would ever thought it's got to be what it is today. King of the Hammers. King of the Hammers is a whole city now of racing.
Yeah,
I mean that's the biggest event in the world. I would say. I
would say for what. Especially in off-road, absolutely. Without being, counting all the spectators in Mexico that watch along the way at like the Baja 1000, because that you can't really count. I don't really count that because they're not a paid spectator or anything. They're just they're there.
Right.
But yeah, it's that event has grown huge, and it spun off the rock crawling because Dave Cole used to run in our series, and he ran in the Pro Rock series with Bob Hazel.
Oh yeah, Bob, I remember Bob.
Yep, and then he and Jeff Knoll got together, and I think it was 2006 they were talking about it. 2007 may have been the first year.
Yeah, who was the guy that sold his series of rock crawling to Ranch, was it?
That was Craig Stump.
Craig Stump, that's it.
Craig Stump started U-Rock.
Yep.
At the same time that I started Cal Rocks. I had been in Cedar City, Utah. When I moved to California, Craig started U-Rock. I started Cal Rocks, and then he brought in partners, the Paties, Mike and Mark Patey.
Yes.
And then they bought him out and brought in and then made a deal with the ranch and dropped
Yes.
ARCA and became all UROC.
Yes.
And that was
Boy, that brings a lot of memories back.
yeah. And then they were doing Craig's the one that started Supercrawl, and that's a whole nother story when I'll have to get Craig Stump on the podcast and talk to him about the whole beginning of UROC and Supercrawl.
Well, then you got to do. You said you met me in Paragon, but he has the place in Indiana now.
Kyle, yeah, I did.
Kyle.
Yep.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
Yeah. I was going to finance Kyle. We looked at another place after he went through all that rigmarole with the town on Paragon, that we looked at a place further out in Pennsylvania that we couldn't come to terms with the people to buy it, but originally was going to do that. And then Kyle got involved with the guy that owned where he's at today.
Troy Myers. Yep.
Yes, Myers.
Yep. Who?
Boy, this is really sparking a lot of memories of names to me.
And then Troy, with Badlands, he hired Jesse Haynes, who is now probably one of the biggest names in rock crawling at this point, if not the biggest. He was building buggies for Troy out of college, and now has turned it into a real successful business with Jesse Haynes Fab.
Yes. Yep. Boy, I'll tell you, we get all this down as history, and a lot of people probably won't enjoy it, but a lot of people will just go, holy shit, I was involved with that. I remember that. I mean, you just brought up a lot of names that I hadn't come across in years, but, they were monumental to me at the time.
Right. So you weren't running the New Rock events, but you started off in Jellicoe down at EROC, the Eastern Rock Crawling Association, and that was like Darryl Motley.
Yes. God, there's another name I hadn't seen in a long time. But we were one of the original people started with those guys, and Charlie kept saying, "You got to come to whatever they called New Rock, I guess it was."
Yep.
With Kyle, and I said, "No." I said, "We're going to win a championship down here, and we're not going to leave to come up there." So the next year, that E-Rock fell apart because those guys were coming from Cleveland, if I remember correctly, to Jellicoe that ran that. So, Charlie says, well, Charlie and I have been friends for many, many years. And I said, okay, so we came up with Kyle. That's how that all started.
Yeah, because one of the things that I've found is that I see with rock crawling organizations, or our sport in general. I don't care if it's businesses, just about any kind of business, but when you have partnerships or even club, because that whole E-Rock thing started off more like a group of guys that decided, hey, let's put together this rock crawling event.
Yes,
and we'll use Jellicoe, and then some guys don't, and I don't know if this is the case with them, but, some guys don't pull their weight. More people, some guys are doing most of the work, and it just gets to the point where, animosity builds like in any relationship. And once animosity builds in any relationship, it's doomed.
Yes, absolutely.
People start keeping score. So that's, it's one of the things I always tell young couples when they're getting ready to get married is, one of the first rules is don't keep score. Do everything you can for the other person in the relationship or business partnership, and don't worry about what the other person is doing. You just got to do your thing.
How true that is. That's amazing. And when you think about it, you have to think about what you just said, and you go, that's absolutely the truth.
Yep, sure is. So running E-Rock, and then the next year, E-Rock kind of falls apart, and you go to New Rock and compete at Kyle's events. That very first event Kyle did, me and Bob Rogie went out there to help them run the two Kyles to run that event. They hadn't done an event.
What is Kyle Jr. doing now? Is he still around?
Yeah, he's putting on like Jeep classes and education and leading trail rides and stuff out of mainly out of Paragon, I believe. He doesn't not Paragon, excuse me. Roush Creek.
Roush Creek.
Yeah,
right.
he's he works out of there a lot. He's not a partner in the park or anything, but he does there, and I think he does runs out at AOAA Anthrite Off-Road Park.
Right, that's out further, yeah.
Yeah, and in Shamokin, and yeah, that's what he's doing nowadays.
There's so many people, they cross paths, he and I and so many other people. It's just, it's amazing now that we're talking about it, that it brings back all these memories in the early days. I can remember the first event we ever did at New Rock. It was nothing there at that time.
No, there wasn't. There was just some rocks in the trees.
Yep. And the week before, they got a voluntary group to cut some trees down and make a trail.
Yeah, so you could get to those rocks.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember the first time we went out, Bob and I went out there to put on, to help them put on that first event. We were driving some of the obstacles, and little Kyle asked, "What do you think of our rocks?" And Rogie, in his standard fashion of speaking, looked around and said, "Yeah, they're great rocks. Too bad you guys drive around them," because there was no marks over the rocks. So, they'd go on the edges and stuff, but none of the big drop-offs yet. And then that first event, guys thought we were really trying to make them look bad. And Charlie had to step in and say, "No, this is what the rock crawling courses look like out west. They've just brought the West Coast wheeling to the east."
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So, guys didn't understand that. They really didn't. Vic Carroll from Atlas Advanced Adapters was there at that first event and had to explain that to some guys in the bar. Same thing. They were sitting around talking about, how the courses were after the first day. And he told him, he goes, "Hey, that's the same kind of courses they set up," and then Charlie said it the next morning at the second driver's meeting, because guys were just, really upset with us, thinking that we were just, we just threw cones up as on the hardest terrain possible just to make them look bad. And that wasn't the case at all. So.
Yeah. Dick Carroll is a good friend of Tom Woods. You know that, don't you?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So all the people that I know and came across in my years.
Pretty much. Yeah, I'd say so. But that's what, that's one of the great things that rock crawling has given me is friendships.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no other thing that I've done in my life where everybody is so close, even if you don't know each other.
Right. If you're a gearhead, you're my friend. That's all it amounts to, because you just look at the relationships that have blossomed out of this, and it's all been through being a gearhead or something involved with cars or competition or something like that. Relationships that are just priceless.
True. Very, very true.
Did you interview Tom?
I have tried to set up an appointment with Tom. He's on my list. Guys that are on my list still, like Tracy Jordan, Jason Pauley,
okay.
Ken Shoup. Those.
Ken will be a prize. Ken he comes up with some of the greatest one-liners that you'll ever hear.
That is true. And then those dang shorts that he always wore.
We called them underwear.
Pretty close.
Yeah, exactly.
So then you went and did New Rock, and then you got involved with the Supercrawl events and U-Rock. Is that correct? Did you go to Vegas and do the events there?
Yes.
Okay.
That was at the hotel there. What the heck was that hotel?
It was
Was in the back parking lot.
the Hyatt Regency. I think it was. Oh no, the Hilton. It's the one right there at the fairgrounds, or not fairgrounds,
Yes.
but the convention center part. And it
Yes.
was the weekend before SEMA started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was that experience like for you?
I wasn't very competitive in it. That's, that they were heads, and I was still on like 35s, and people were on 38s and 40s at that time. Well, maybe not so much 40s, but they were on 37s and 38s. And we were just not competitive. We were nothing. In fact, I think that's the one they had that high climb.
Yeah, they called it the Matterhorn, I think.
Yes, the Matterhorn. That's it. Boy, you got a better memory than I do. That's for sure.
It's only because I've been doing these podcasts.
Oh, okay.
It's fresher in my memory.
Oh, but that was pretty friggin' scary to me.
Right. Those man-made courses, you could make them super extreme where you wouldn't think about putting people on those kind of courses with all the natural stuff.
No, and the one in Indianapolis or Cleveland, they had one like that too. And Charlie Melchner was the first guy that ever got up it. A contractor owned the property, and then the town shut him down or something.
Yeah.
We had an event there.
Yep, I do remember that.
They were like 3 big sewer pipes, and they were at the top of it. And Charlie Melchner was the first guy that ever made that.
Didn't know
I
that.
thought he was a little nuts.
You thought?
Well, okay.
You knew.
convinced me. I knew, right.
Oh, Charlie. Gotta love him.
Yeah, absolutely. He'd give you the shirt off his back.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, we bought a boat, my wife and I, to live on in the off season. And the first thing I did is, I made a list of things that I needed to fix or replace. And I called Charlie and I said, okay, here, I want to order these things through you because, I always believe in trying to help the businesses of my friends.
Right.
Especially if they're on the outside of, if the business is outside of off-road, I'd rather buy from somebody I know than buy from Amazon or, anybody else. I mean, it's so impersonal and, it's all about helping friends.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that concept.
So
even if you had to pay a little bit more, it's just support. It's support.
yes, I wish people would do that more throughout their life.
No question about it.
I know that the convenience of things showing up at your front step, the next day or the same day like Amazon does, but it's, everything that they've done to build that business has affected everybody else's business that does the same thing on a,
Absolutely.
because they have so much buying power. It's insane.
But, as big as Amazon to be, do you know who's even bigger than Amazon? And I found this to be, and I researched it to find out if it was true. Walmart is bigger than Amazon.
I know that they're getting more into the online stuff, but they also have the brick and mortar stores. So yeah, I could see that when you put it all together.
I couldn't believe that in the beginning until I researched it and found out that it was true. I just thought that Amazon was humongous compared to Walmart.
Yeah, I guess in overall sales, they probably are.
Yeah.
I know when Sam Walton died, and he was like the richest man, and then he, the family broke up the business or broke up the ownership, that like the wife and then the 3 kids or whatever, how many it was, ended up being like, in the top, all 4 of them ended up being in like the top 6 or 7 in money earnings, worldwide. So yeah, it tells you something about what Walton built.
Well, look at Fred Smith. His cousin is my next door neighbor in Aspen, Colorado.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy that came from nothing and a multi-zillionaire now.
That's amazing. It really
Yeah.
is. So how often do you get out to Colorado?
Not as often as I want, but Barbara gets out at least 6 weeks a year. She goes out 2 weeks at a time during ski season. I haven't skied in 5 or 6 years now, but I've got enough things to do here.
Right.
But we've had that place since the 80s. You know, the early 1980, I think we bought that.
Right. So getting back to the rock crawling and off-road, you competed at super crawls and the U-Rock events, and then you started doing our We Rock events as we pushed east. And then you said you got in. Did you ever enter and race in KOH?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I think they were just starting at Paragon. I think they had 1 or 2 races there, and it just didn't interest me. You know, the high speed tearing up of equipment. That's all I could see.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a completely different way of racing, because there was just too much carnage in what satisfaction you got out of racing. That was my opinion, but you know, it just didn't interest me.
So in those early days, when we were talking about the first Quadratech team, it was you, Charlie, and were there other drivers involved with that team?
Yeah, there was 3 of us.
All right, and then they cut the funding, and then they picked up somebody else that was willing to do it for less.
Well, not so much that, is the owner of Quadratech. Chris was a friend of mine that ran the show, but Chris said that they wanted to do it with internal. They had enough people that wanted to compete in their own team, you know, that worked for them.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was the falling out of an outside team compared to having employees building their own team from within.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
And it kind of made sense business-wise, you know, to have their own people.
Right. Yeah, promote within.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So when you decided to retire, which was like 2008, I believe, from off-roading?
Yep, 2008.
Okay.
We had just finished first place, and I think that was at Roush Creek. And I said, that's it. I'm 68. Time to go.
Was it just the physical wear and tear on the body because of rollovers and stuff, or was it just...
you know about them, huh?
Everybody suffers them.
End over end. Attica, Indiana, Roush Creek. I had one that was $26,000 in medical bills.
Whoa.
That was the helicopter to the trauma center, and then the trauma center. That was $26,000.
Yeah,
and
that gets into your budget.
Yes. So let the young kids do it.
So since then, you've been doing your storage units?
Well, I've got 11 street rods now.
11 street rods. Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
If you ever get out east here, I'd be happy to show them to you. I've got a big shop. I got a machine shop. I went back to school when I was probably 10 years ago. I went to machinist school here at Lakehurst at the Navy Air Station. They had a course for machinists, and I knew the machine shop friend of mine that owns it. He gave me a letter of employment, and you could do it through Ocean County VOTEC. You could get into the school here at Lakehurst Naval Air Station. So it was a 4-year course that I took for machining. So now I have my own machine shop.
Nice. So you're doing all the stuff yourself, or a majority of it instead of with these hot rods.
Absolutely.
So what kind of, can you give us kind of a general rundown of what you got?
Offhand, I've got a 26 Model T Doctor's Coupe, which is very rare. All Model T coupes were 5-window. I got a 3-window, and they saved $20 by getting a 3-window coupe. So I've got that with a Chevy V8 in it. I've got a 29 pickup with a Chevy V8 in it. I got a 33 Roadster with a Chevy V8. I've got the original Jeep that I built for 2000 King of the Hammers. I've got a 500 cubic inch Cadillac fuel injected motor in that, and I still have that. I built that back in the 80s.
Wow.
So I've got a 32 Vicky. I've got a 32 Phaeton. They're all street rods. They're all, chassis, transmissions, V8 motors.
Right.
Do you ever get out east?
Actually, I do. We were doing events up into Pennsylvania. I haven't done them. I didn't do them last year or the year before or this year because of, I guess I did do it in 2020. I didn't do it in 21. The interest wasn't there. The guys are trying to get guys in that, what I would term more the Northeast, to travel has been a little difficult. So Hans Schur has been putting on some events out there, and everybody's been participating in those, which I think is great because at least the rock crawling competitions haven't died in that area. But we are looking at events in that area again.
Well, you got a place to stay if you've ever come out. I'd be more than happy to put you up.
That sounds great. We'll make that happen, even if it's just one of our magazine tours, because I'm running a magazine now as well.
What do you do in your spare time?
I don't even watch TV really, so I do whatever Shelley would like me to do.
Now that was a perfect answer. Boy, I'm proud of you.
She'll get a kick out of that when she does her part of this podcast. I do the editing, and then she goes through and does the transcript. So doing the hot rods now, do you have a project are they a constant working on the projects, or do you have a project that you're working on right now?
Nothing in particular. The business is keeping me pretty busy. I just got a new tenant from Shark Tank, so it's probably a third of the building that they're taking over. So, business has kept me a lot more busy than I want to be. Let's put it that way. I'm 80 years old now, and I just want to do nothing compared to, doing this everyday stuff. So
I get it.
But this type business is very rewarding to the point that it's not something that you got to be at 8 hours a day or 6 days a week or whatever. It's by appointment only. And like that gentleman that had just called, he called 2 days ago to pick up an application, and he's going to Afghanistan. He's in the military, and he wants to store a car outside. And I said, fine, that's what the interruption of when we got. He just came, but I told him, I said, if he wants to fill out the application on the internet, you can. It's under Ridgeway Lockup, so they can do that. And it's nothing that I have to spend a lot of time at. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Interesting. Yep, I get it. Yeah, try to. A lot of people call it that mailbox money.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, things just happen, and you don't have to work them every day, all day.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how our little hotel is.
Yeah, it's this business is like that. There's not a lot of attention that has to be paid. Person pays their rent on time, or they pay by the year. You give them a discount, and you don't see them again. They can come and go at your business hours when the gates are open, and that's it. It's nothing that you have to be 24/7 on. It's a great business, and you just screen the clientele very well in the beginning, and it kind of runs itself.
So you said that you have a tenant in there, a newer tenant that was on Shark Tank. Can you say who that was?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to do that.
No worries.
But I can tell you, Lori is the backer.
Okay, awesome.
I just don't know if it's proper if I would disclose that.
Right. No, I understand. That's that show has always interested me. I don't know.
I love it. I like Mark Cuban the best.
Yes.
He sits back and analyzes everything and puts it to. He's my idol. Let's put it that way.
I think that if I was ever on that show and he showed the interest, it wouldn't even be, I would take a lot smaller deal from Mark than I would from the others just to work with that guy.
Yes. I mean, have you ever researched any of his background? He came from nothing, selling papers as a kid to going through college and doing things that he's a miraculous person. And there's a lot of people that don't like him, but he's a great businessman. He analyzes stuff ahead of time that you don't even think of.
Right.
And I've always admired him. I mean, I like his way of doing business.
I agree. There's a lot of guys out there that have television shows that I would never do business with. I won't even buy. I won't even buy things from businesses they own.
Yep, I agree with you. But anyway.
So what is next for Jack?
Live and learn and die and forget it all.
Live and learn and die and forget it all. So 80 years.
I don't know.
80 years has been good to you, for
Absolutely.
the most part. Yep.
Absolutely.
That's great to hear.
I'm not involved in politics, and I just dread what's going on today. It's way beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, that would be a whole nother genre of podcast, getting into politics and.
But it goes nowhere. It's like discussing religion. I mean, because there's two sides to every story, and who's right? I don't know.
Correct.
I'm not qualified.
I get it. Neither am I. I'm so glad I turned down the chance to get into politics when I was young.
Yeah, well, that's the way I always felt, because what do with this hand, the other hand is jealous, and the other hand is going to do this one now, and then I want to be away from any of that. I've never been part of it, and then never intend to be a part of it.
Sounds great. So let's talk family a little bit. You had your first wife who you put through school and to be a lawyer, and then she sued you for divorce.
That's my second wife.
Oh, that was your second wife.
Yes. My first wife has passed away.
All right.
That was my second wife.
Okay, second wife. All right. And then now you're with your third?
Correct.
Okay. And her name was, I know you just mentioned it?
Barbara.
And how long have you guys been married?
40 years.
40 years? Okay.
Yeah. Be 40 years in January.
Awesome.
Well, I'm still getting to know her.
What Shelley and I, it's our second time around each, and I had 26 years, and she had 25 years experience, and what we realized is that we figured out what we didn't want, not what we wanted.
Exactly.
So we talked about all our deal breakers before we actually physically met. We met online through eHarmony, and I never would have met her elsewise. When I became single, there was nobody within my circle of influence that I was interested in, and anybody that I would have been interested in was already married to a friend of mine. So, of course, that wasn't going to work. So I went on to eHarmony thinking, I'm going to pay eHarmony to do their thing because other people that are on there are paying as well. And if they're paying, they're going to be a little more serious.
That's a good thought. I never even thought of it that way. But yes, you're right.
Because even though I was, on the non-pay sites, maybe looking for a hookup, deep down I probably, Shelley calls me a serial monogamist. And I guess that's not a bad thing.
No.
Yeah.
But it's a very comprehensive description.
Yes. But, with one of the things, we figured out that what we didn't want, and we discussed those things. And so our relationship has been really close. We're together basically 24/7. Every once in a while, there'll be a week where she goes, or a few days where she goes off and does something with one of her daughters. But it works out, and we're able to spend that much time together without conflict.
Yes, exactly. That's the way Barbara and I are. She's going to her 50th class reunion for nurses. She taught nursing at the Mayo Clinic. So this is the 50th reunion they're having. And she's leaving next week for that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Jack, I want to say, before I say goodbye, are there any stories from any events about, say, Charlie or anybody else that you want to share with us that you think people would be interested in hearing? Nothing, outrageous, but just something fun.
I don't think so, because they were all good events to me, and they were just so there was nothing that would stand out, but it was my enjoyment the whole time. So I really couldn't pick out any one thing that I enjoyed every bit of it. I mean, good, bad, and indifferent, and I just learned that I enjoyed it all, and I wouldn't change a thing of anything that's ever happened. It's a long progress. It went way too fast. That's all I can say.
I understand that. This last 21 years that I've been in the business end of it has been sometimes, when I look back on it, it's like, wow, that happened how long ago? And then you realize,
when did that happen?
Yeah.
Did that really happen? I know. Every day I'd say that and go, but I never thought that way before. It was just enjoying it was going along. But now you go, holy mackerel.
Yep. Well,
listen, I just want to make sure that you understand you have an invitation anytime to put you up here. Be happy to do that. So if you ever get out east here again, you got a place to bunk out.
That's excellent. Jack, thank you so much. I've missed you. We were, I can't say that we were really close back in those days. Things were so busy during the events and stuff, but the friendships that I've built, being able to sit down and talk like this, brings us full circle. And next time we get out east, I will give you a call and we'll take you up on that, and we'll have a conversation where we're actually face to face.
And we may have a good bottle of wine or a beer or something and just sit and reminisce. Now that we're old, you can do that.
Yeah, it's true. It's always easier to look back on things when they've got a little dust on them, you might say.
Yes. And I really appreciate going back through memory road with you. I mean, had a lot of good times. Yeah,
that was the golden era, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Jack.
All right, I'll be looking forward to seeing you.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Thank you so much.
Right. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.